on, everyone? This is Lucas Ross Sports, Lucas Ross, your commentator, and we continue our 2022 college football predictions. The Iowa Hawkeyes are up next. I'll give you an official record for this team, give you my thoughts on this team, and also give you a schedule preview, and we will go from there. Before we do that, though, let's look back at 2021 for this Iowa team. In 2021, the Iowa Hawkeyes went 10-4 overall. This team went to the Big Ten Championship last year. They really didn't compete in that game against Michigan, though. This team kind of fell apart at the end of the season. They lost their bowl game to Kentucky as well. This team kind of had a rough year, up and down year, but, there's still plenty to improve on. The offensive defensive rankings were not really similar to each other. 99th overall in offense last year. That offense needs to improve. Defensively, they were really good. They were a top 30 or top 15 defense, 13th in the country last year. They were really good on defense. 23.4 points a game last year on the offensive side of the ball. This team can really try to improve that number. And the defense overall, 19.2 points given up. So that defense was really good last year. They were, forcing turnovers. The offense returns almost everybody back from last year's team. This offense should be really good. People think they will be explosive. May not be explosive overall, but this team should be still good. Defensively, they have quite a bit coming back, but not really a whole lot. They don't really return the amount of production, on defense this year. But this team should overall be really good. There's that 2022 schedule for this Iowa team. They have South Dakota State to kick off the season, September the 3rd. This is a game that Iowa should take care of business in. They have no business in losing this game. I know South Dakota State is one of the highest FCS teams in the country, but, Iowa does take care of business in this game against South Dakota State, and they will start out the season 1-0. That's a game they should take care of business in. And there's that game against Iowa State at home, rival game here. Iowa State's going to be a really young team this year. I'm not really high on this team, as people might say. If you go back and watch my Iowa State video, I know people are saying that Iowa State will be better, but it's just my prediction that Iowa State's going to be really young. They might struggle this year, but, in this game, first half, I think Iowa State does hang around, but Iowa, at the end of the day, does take care of business. I think the offense will step up to the table in this one. Defensively, it's going to be really hard to predict what Iowa will look like, but I think the defense will be, trying to get better throughout the end of the year. But this game right here, I think Iowa does win it here against Iowa State. Not by a blowout. Let's be honest, it's a rival game. It can go either way. But I think Iowa does win that one at home. And that is taking care of business on September 17th. But this is a Nevada team that's a great group of 5 team, but just a game that Iowa should take care of business in. They have no rights to lose in this one. And they open up Big Ten play against Rutgers on the road. Rutgers are going to be an interesting team this year. They have quite a lot coming back on offense. Defensively, they're going to be pretty young, but, they still should hang around with Iowa in this game, maybe in the first half. I think offensively, though, in the second half, I think Iowa will step up to the table on the road at the Rutgers, and they will pull out a win here. Not by a lot, but, still a win there for Iowa. I think it's going to be an interesting battle there in the first half, but the Rutgers will probably, run out of gas. And I think Iowa does win this game. Not by a bunch, but, it's going to be a game that I think Iowa does pull away in the second half. And there's that game against Michigan at home. We know this game right here is a matchup that everybody is talking about. Iowa and Michigan playing in the regular season. We know how the Big Ten Championship was last year. Michigan dominated Iowa. But the question is, how good will Michigan be on defense this year? Michigan does lose a lot on defense this year. Iowa returns a lot on offense. Who has the better production percentage overall, though? And I think that's Iowa. I think, with it being at home, but, Michigan does return a lot on offense this year. This could be a shootout game. It could go either way. It could go back and forth, but I think Iowa, they have the better defense, and they will step up maybe in the second half, and they give Michigan some problems. And I think this game does go either way, but I think Iowa does pull off a win here against Michigan. It might be a top 15 showdown, maybe a top 10 matchup as well. It could decide who's trying to get in the college football playoff as well. I know it's early, though, in the year, and I think Michigan has a lot of time to try to, get better throughout the end of the season. Their defense is just going to be really young. But I think Iowa does pull off a win here at home against Michigan. We saw what they did last year to Penn State at home, and that's what I think will happen again. I think Iowa does pull off a win here against Michigan at home. Illinois is on the road on October the 8th. Illinois is a team that's going to be really young this year, not really explosive, and, not really, the same team as they were last year. I'm not really high on this Illinois team. I predicted them to go 5-7, and I got that prediction right from last year. But Illinois is a team that, has a lot of question marks on both sides of the ball. I think that's why Iowa will, go on the road and defeat Illinois. Maybe the first quarter, I think Illinois does give them a scare, but I think it's a game that Iowa can really, go ahead and just put that one away and put that one aside there. But this is a game that, I think it's just going to be, Illinois is not really competing. I think Iowa does go in there on the road and maybe gets a win. But, maybe a blowout game, but, you never know. So, it could be a potential upset. Next game is against Ohio State on the road. Biggest game maybe in the West versus East showdown here. And the good news is for this Iowa team, they get a bye week before playing this game. So they have a lot of time to think about Ohio State. This could potentially be a big upset here if Iowa does go on the road and defeat Ohio State. But let's talk about Ohio State. They bring C.J. Stroud back at quarterback. We know he was off to a slow start, but man, he got better throughout the end of the year. Ohio State was an explosive offense. This team could wind up being one of the most dangerous teams in college football this year. We don't know what Ohio State, is going to look like on defense. The offense, though, is going to be really good. Defensively, they bring quite a lot back. It's going to be depending on if they're going to be so good or not. And the overall production percentage, I give it to Ohio State, and also the defensive front. Maybe a defensive battle throughout the whole game. Ohio State, though, does have the better defense. The offense goes to Iowa. But at the end of the day, though, I got to go with the Buckeyes. I think they're going to give Iowa their first loss. Home field advantage is there as well for Ohio State. I know Iowa can really get close in this game, but who knows? It could be not a really close game. But it will be a close game, in my opinion. I think it will be a close one. Depending on what Iowa does in this game, their offense has just got to score some points. They will score, I think, in this game, but at the end of the day, though, I think the Buckeyes will pull out the win, and it's going to be a win there for Iowa. Actually Ohio State. It might be a top 10 showdown, maybe a top 5 as well. So, don't sleep on that game. October 29th is against Northwestern. Northwestern has quite a lot coming back as well this year. This could potentially be a close game, maybe in the first half. I think Iowa, though, after that loss to Ohio State, though, they will redeem themselves. And I think they do get a win here against Northwestern. I think it's going to be a close game, though, in the first half. But, at the end of the day, though, with it being at home, I think Iowa does redeem themselves, and they finally get a win. And then there's that game at Purdue on the road. This could be the game that decides the Big Ten West. This game right here, Purdue and Iowa. These two teams are battling it out. They had a great matchup last year. Purdue, though, they were a really good team last year, one of the biggest underdogs in the Big Ten West last year. I didn't expect Purdue to be all that good. They're really, an explosive offense from last year. Purdue does return good amount of production on defense. The offense, though, has quite a lot coming back as well, but there's a lot of question marks a little bit for Purdue. This Purdue team is still going to be really good, though. I think they have a chance to maybe knock off some teams this year. This game, though, I don't think I see Purdue winning, though. I think it's going to be a win for Iowa, but it will be a close game. It might be a shootout game. It might be a game that can go either way. But, Iowa, though, I give the production percentage to them, and I think it's going to be a win there for the Hawkeyes. Wisconsin on November 12th. Wisconsin is a team that, people have, doubts on. People think Wisconsin is not going to be that really good this year. I still think this team is going to be really good, but, it just depends on what they are going to look like. Offensively, they don't really return a lot this year. Defensively, have a lot of question marks as well. I think this will be a win here for Iowa as well. Maybe the first quarter, I think Wisconsin hangs around, but it's going to be all Iowa in this game. I think Wisconsin will really not compete in this one. Just the production percentage is not really good for Wisconsin this year as well. This could be the first time that I think Wisconsin maybe has a downfall year. It could be that chance, but it could not. So, it could be a chance that Wisconsin doesn't have a good year, but we'll see what happens. Next game is against Minnesota on the road. Minnesota's a team that is an underdog as well in the West, and they have a lot coming back on offense this year. Defensively, question marks. Iowa does have the returning production percentage ahead of them in this game. It's on the road, though. It's not going to be an easy game. It's not going to be an easy game for Iowa. This is a game that they could potentially lose and get knocked out of college football playoff contention as well. But Minnesota, I think, doesn't have the better offense. They don't have the better defense. I think Iowa does get the win here against Minnesota. I mean, it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a close game. It could go through all 4 quarters, but it's a game that I just think Iowa does have production percentage advantage. And then there's that final game against Nebraska at home. This game is on a Friday night, Nebraska and Iowa. Tough game here for both of these teams. Nebraska, I think, is desperate for a win by this point, but Iowa, with them being at home, Nebraska is going to be an underdog team as well in the Big Ten. I just don't see Nebraska being all that capable of beating Iowa in this game. It's at home here for Iowa, and I think this game can go back and forth, but first half, I think it's going to be a game, and then second half, I think Iowa does pull away. Nebraska had a lot of close games last year. We know how Nebraska was. They were a really good team, but just didn't know how to win games. And I think the overall prediction for Iowa does come out to be 11-1, but there are some potential losses on this schedule. Minnesota, Purdue, Michigan, those are games that I think they can really lose, and they might go 8-4. But 11-1, I think the schedule really sets up nicely for Iowa. They don't really have a tough game in September. I think the only tough game in there is probably Iowa State, maybe the Rutgers. October is a little bit tough. They get Michigan and Ohio State. Tough draw out of the East this year. But there's a possibility that this team can make it to the college football playoff and also are capable of, defeating others' teams. But give me your thoughts on this Iowa team down in the comments below. And we will continue to do more football predictions throughout the week. And stay tuned here for more on Lucas Ross Sports.